to tread on human blood for military or political gains. Those were the words of Pope Leo while in Cameroon. In 3 cities and 4 days, Pope Leo XIV delivered what church leaders are calling a prophetic challenge to Cameroon: end the violence, reject corruption, and build structures of solidarity so no one is left alone to face life's adversities. Again, we analyze the Pope's recommendations and what must be retained and why not applied all in this news edition. Plus, a major question is being asked among a cross-section of Cameroonians. Pope Leo has come and gone. What next? We attempt an answer in this newscast. And also a possible solution to the Anglophone problem resurfaces again. What should be done this time around to get it right after the failed dialogue in Yaoundé? Viewers, those are our lead stories. Stay with us for details and more. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for always being with us. Thank you for the usual confidence. In 3 cities and 4 days, we told you in the headlines, Pope Leo XIV delivered what church leaders are calling a prophetic challenge to Cameroon and Cameroonians: end the violence in the northwest, the southwest, and in the northern regions of the country, reject corruption at all levels, and build structures of solidarity so no one is left alone to face life's adversities or challenges. This public opinion says are things to retain about the Pope's visit to Cameroon. For me, I'm from Sanda with more.
Pope Leo XIV's 4-day apostolic journey to Cameroon ended on Saturday, but Catholic bishops and civil society leaders say the message is already reshaping national conversation on peace, governance, and corruption. The April 15 to 18 visit, the first Papa trip to Cameroon in over a decade, took the pontiff from Yaoundé to Douala, and in a historic first to the conflict-affected city of Bamenda. The Pope made history on April the 17th as the first pontiff to visit Bamenda, the heart of the Anglophone regions. At the St. Joseph's Cathedral in Mancon, he presided over a meeting for peace attended by the clergy, traditional rulers, and Muslim leaders. Separatist groups responded by declaring a rare 3-day ceasefire, with residents describing his presence as a moment of reassurance after years of violence. A day later, more than 120,000 people filled the Japoma Sports Complex in Douala for an open-air mass, the largest crowd of his tour in Cameroon. There, the Holy Father urged the youth to reject every form of abuse and violence and warned of the dangers of polarization driven by artificial intelligence. Pope Leo's sharpest remarks came in Bamenda: "Woe to those who manipulate religion and the very name of God for their own military, economic, and political gain," he told the congregation. He called for communal commitment which integrates the spiritual and moral dimensions of the gospel in the heart of local institutions to confront poverty and injustice. No one must be left alone to confront life's adversities, he said to the congregation. Analysts and the president of Cameroon's Bishops' Conference said the Pope's language was a pointed critique of public resource management. His words, they noted, suggested that mismanagement had turned a potential paradise into a pandemonium. The Pope appealed directly to those in power for renewed commitment to tackling corruption. The visit also emphasized interfaith unity. Pope Leo held what participants called a very fine meeting with a group of imams promoting dialogue and peace building. He noted that the Anglophone crisis had drawn Christians and Muslims closer, with religious leaders forming a joint movement for peace. He began his trip in Yaoundé on April the 15th with an audience with President Paul Biya and government officials discussing peace and social challenges. He also visited the Nguzamba orphanage, spending time with children as a sign of closeness to the most vulnerable. Before departing on April the 18th, the Pope left Cameroonians with a charge: "Do not be afraid, remain firmly united to Christ the Lord. With the strength of your spirit, you will be the salt and the light of the land." He also told the people of the city of Bamenda that they remain the city on the hill, resplendent in the eyes of all, adding that the church continues on its course thanks to the grace of God and the commitments of everyone. Church officials in Cameroon say that the Pope's legacy will be measured not by the crowd, but by how Cameroonians respond to his call for peace, accountability, and communal action.
And while Pope Leo's message of peace, unity, and living together still echoes across the country, the resounding question in the minds of a cross-section of Cameroonians remain: what next after the Pope's visit? In a recent interview with the President of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon, His Grace Andrew Nkea, on Vatican News, he said Cameroonian authorities must set up committees to see that the Pope's message is implemented and ensure that peace is a reality in the country. Mala Glory.
Andrew Nkea has called on citizens and leaders to turn the Pope's message of peace, unity and dialogue into concrete action that drives real change across communities. The president of the Episcopal Conference of Cameroon says that the question of what next after Pope Leo's departure is left for Cameroonians to answer.
That question, what next, is very important for all of us. And I think that in the whole country, we have to sit down to digest that message, all those messages that the Pope brought. And secondly, we have to see what it takes to be able to implement some of the things that he said.
One of the places the Pope visited was the restive northwest region of Cameroon, where the ongoing armed conflict has affected many families and shattered the future of several young people. The Pope's message in this region was clear: the time for peace is now. Andrew Nkea reflects on the way forward.
And you discover that we as Bamenda people have to start reflecting concretely on this message. If the time of peace is now, how do we make that now to happen?
Pope Leo XIV reminded Cameroonian government that peace is not a mere slogan, but should be put into action. And for peace to return to the English regions of Cameroon and the country at large, the government must initiate dialogue with the different conflicting parties.
How do we dialogue with the separatists in the bush? And how do we get the separatists in the bush to be able to see how to dialogue with government? So these are things that we members of civil society and church, we have to do to be able to make sure that the words of the Pope don't get wasted.
Civil society actor Aristide Mono, on his part, believed with all the Pope's critics on the country's poor governance, it is time for the authorities concerned to reflect on the fundamental change on how a country is governed.
A dressé un bilan pas du tout réluisant de la gouvernance camerounaise, que ce soit la démocratie, les élections, le respect des droits de l'homme, la corruption. Je crois qu'aujourd'hui, si les officiels camerounais veulent vraiment consolider l'esprit qu'ils ont présenté pendant ce séjour, ces autorités doivent revoir leur manière de fonctionner. Maintenant, est-ce que cela est faisable?
In his final farewell message, Pope Leo urged Cameroonians to remain united and not to give in to fear.
Meantime, it's exactly 1 year that was on April 21, 2025 that the successor of our Pope Leo, Pope Francis, passed on, and the world continues to honor the enduring legacy of Pope Francis and his profound message of mercy as well. His choice of a humble burial remains a powerful symbol of the simplicity he champions throughout his transformative papacy. Today, his spirit as the pilgrim of peace lives on, particularly across Africa, where his defense for human dignity remains a guiding light for new generations. Lord Mayeru tells us more.
His funerals, held on a solemn morning in mid-March, was the testament of his life. There was no gold, no triple sarcophagus. In accordance with his wishes, he was laid in the single suppressed casket directly on the stones of St. Peter's Square. As the wind turned the pages of the gospel resting on his coffin, the world says the ultimate heroic act, a leader of millions choosing the humility of the poorest. Africa remembers him in the Pilgrim of Peace. From the street of Bangui to the stadium of Kinshasa, Francis brought hope where there was conflict. He was the first pope to open the holy door outside of Rome, doing so in the heart of Africa. He didn't just visit the continent, he embraced it. calling on the youths to be diamonds on their nations, denouncing the economic colonialism that plunders its soul. Today, in 2026, his spirit lives in every act of mercy, a hero who found the strength in the weak, a shepherd who smells up his sheep. Pope Francis, his journey ended on the Rome cobblestone, but his heartbeat remained in the heart of Africa and of the world.
And a wave of renewed scrutiny is falling on government's handling of Cameroon's protracted Anglophone crisis following remarks by Prof. Leo, who condemns the human and moral cost of conflicts sustained by heavy military spending, speaking after hearing harrowing testimonies from victims in the northwest and southwest regions while he was in Bamenda. The pontiff questioned the priorities of leaders who continue to channel vast resources into warfare rather than peace building, adding a fresh international voice to the ongoing debate about government's efforts to end the Anglophone crisis. Babila Jonathan has details.
After listening to accounts of suffering, killing and destruction some Cameroonians have gone through because of the conflict in the northwest and southwest regions, Pope Leo XIV criticized leaders who spend billions on wars.
The masters of war pretend not to know that it takes only a moment to destroy. Yet often, a lifetime is often not enough to rebuild. They turn a blind eye to the fact that billions of dollars are spent on killing, on devastation, yet the resources needed for healing, education, and restoration are nowhere to be found. Those who rob your land of its resources generally invest much of the profit in weapons.
The Pope's remarks come in a context where the government of Cameroon has continued to invest financial resources into a military-led solution to the Anglophone crisis, a conflict that has persisted since late 2016. Opposition and civil society leaders have raised concerns about the government's attempt to resolve the conflict via military action, notably the tracking and killing of pro-independence fighters. In a speech in St. Joseph's Cathedral in Bamenda, the Pope criticized those who use religion to justify military actions.
Jesus told us, "Blessed are the peacemakers." But woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth.
The remarks came days after a high-profile spat with U.S. President Donald Trump, who posted an attack on the Pope, a vocal critic of the U.S.-Israeli military operation in Iran. The Pope had voiced his concern about Trump's threat that a whole civilization will die if Iran did not agree to U.S. demands to end the war and open the Strait of Hormuz.
General Conference is back with renewed urgency following the visit of Pope Leo XIV. The momentum is raising expectations for inclusive dialogue, frank dialogue, and concrete action to address the deepening crisis in the two English-speaking regions of the country. While the initiative is already facing criticism, some Anglophone Cameroonians believe it could offer another credible path towards lasting solutions to the Anglophone problem. Innocent Asset tells us more.
Dr. Simon Munzo, originator of the Anglophone General Conference, AGC, in 2017, says the moment is critical. In a statement released after the Pope's departure, he describes the conference as a national imperative necessary to address deep-rooted grievances in the Anglophone regions. Several Anglophones, sustaining the idea, insist that the forum remains crucial to put key concerns on the discussion table.
If Anglophones in Cameroon are supposed to operate from a standpoint of oneness, then we must have an all-Anglophone conference. We're discussing issues about governance structure that is federalism and unitarianism, cultural and linguistic rights of Cameroonians, dialogue and reconciliation. For open dialogue permits the government to have a sit-down with separatists to talk, economic development, within the regions, northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. There are many things to discuss about.
Given the fact that the country already claims that it has given the two English-speaking regions a special status, where the concrete issues will actually be to see how they can redefine or put more meaning into what already exists, or better still, demand more concrete changes in terms of the greater autonomy that people have been asking for quite a while now.
While many Anglophones continue to clamor for federalism, an option not embraced by the Biar administration, uncertainty still surrounds whether the agency will receive official backing.
Looking at the system, the centralized system we have today, it is very disheartening that it limits development, it limits progress. So we think that if we get towards that direction of saying, okay, federalism should be implemented and implemented for the good of the people, it will work. Even if it does not, something that is close to it should be given that can permit the people to fully involve in the development of their country.
Federalism remains an option that people of the former British Southern Cameroons have always looked for up to, and if the government thinks they cannot change the form of state, because I've virtually argued that even federalism with the current issues, people can effectively fuse federalism, confederation, and even a greater autonomy into the special status that we have right now.
As the Anglophone crisis deepens, widely attributed by observers to a lack of political will, expectations are rising for the agency to finally hold with fair and actionable recommendations that can be effectively implemented.
The problem is not ideology. The problem is not proposition of solutions. The problem is political will to handle problems. Let the government not only see and deceive us with sweet talks, but they should make that decision to be involved in problem solving in this country.
The government listened to Anglophones when after the AAC1 and the beautiful recommendations, AA2 and the chain of recommendations would have been hit where we are. So it is still the lack of political will. But I know that the government already have seen the results since 2016 in terms of demanding for greater autonomy. And so if it's AAC3 or the Anglophone conference effectively holds, I think the government will be wise enough to implement its resolution, given what is on the ground now.
Ultimately, the agency is no longer a question. Whether through an Anglophone General Conference or broader national dialogue, expectations are clear. Concrete decisions, genuine political will, and results that move beyond promises to deliver lasting peace and stability.
And just to mention, Third Senator for Tabe Tandun Dopsia and Diepso is no more. He died, that was today, in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, and our reporters have made a stopover at his residence to get the atmosphere there and also reactions from fellow senators. We will be bringing to you the reactions and details at his residence in Yaoundé in subsequent news editions on Equinoxe Television. And that does it for the first part of the news, viewers. Let's move on to Talking Point. Welcome back, viewers. Our guest tonight is the youth chaplain of the Douala Archdiocese, Reverend Father Christopher GEH KUM. Thank you, Father, for accepting to be our guest on the news tonight. Thank you for always being available. Now, the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, has come to Cameroon and gone, but leaving behind what can be described as a huge assignment for us Cameroonians, be they the clergy, public authorities, and the civil society in Bamenda, in Douala, and in Yaoundé. The Holy Father spoke to the consciences of the Cameroonian people. Now, as a prelate, Father Christopher, can we come back to the high points of the Pope's message during his 3-day stay in Cameroon?
I thank God that the Pope arrived in Cameroon to tell us exactly what we should do. And I am touched because I'm supposed to be doing what he told me, but I'm not doing. If he's coming from Rome to come and tell me exactly what to do, it's really touching. You know, talking to the nation, he was not only talking to the politicians, he was not only talking to the population, the citizens of Cameroon, and he was not only talking to the ministers of God, he was putting a message across the universe, telling us to make sure that dictatorship is put aside, telling us that we have to be peacemakers, because where there is no unity and love, it is empty. So the Pope looked at us into our faces and described Cameroonians the way they are, because there is wickedness in Cameroon. If the Pope is coming, is to draw awareness that we are not living according to the precepts of the gospel. All of us, from the priest to the lay people and leaders of nation, I think that, and in Douala, I'm so happy that he even spoke to young people, in English, where I am, the priest who takes care of young people. In Bamenda, he talked of bloodshed. Bloodshed is something that is terrible. When in the book of Genesis, chapter 4, verse 1 to 16, when Cain killed Abel, he got cursed. And I am assuring you that there are many curses in Cameroon because there is a lot of bloodshed. He said fighting one another is terrible, and that we should take care of the most vulnerable, and that we are Africa and miniature. It means that we have riches that we are not using. You see, it's total barrenness to have riches that we are not seeing. And I realize that the Bible talks about, riches. Those who are blind, riches will pass by, but you will never see it. It is said in the book of Isaiah chapter 55 that those who are not with God, when riches come, they don't see it. And in Cameroon, we have all sorts of riches, but we don't see it. He called on the government or the leaders of our nation to be very careful. Justice is very important. He called on them again to be good leaders. He is the head of state. He cannot be a head of state without putting into practice what he preaches. So he came to talk to his children. If we have a mind, our politicians have, that mind to change Cameroon, it will change in a second. Because before the Pope ever came to Cameroon, some of the places, coins of Cameroon that were barren, where the Pope was to touch, they became transformed within a second. But that is what is happening. Even the war that is happening in the northwest, southwest, and even in the northern province, it can take 5 minutes for our state, because we have a powerful government that can do a lot of things. So I am also touching that to say that the useless war that is in the northwest should have not even gone for 1 month. If our government decide that it stopped, it will stop today.
Okay.
Yes.
Said, woe beside those who tread on blood for military and political gains. We heard it in the report by Informe. He therefore was alluding to wars in Cameroon. What's your position on that? Can you come back to that detailing further?
So even if our government decides that it should stop, it will stop within a second. And even those who are fighting, the freedom fighters, so-called freedom fighters, they should redefine, whether the Pope's message taught them. Because when you're talking about bloodshed is not only on the other side, it is both. Because you find that children are not going to school for many years, about 10 years today. But our consciences should judge us. Why are we really fighting ourselves? And the Pope leaving Rome to come and settle us, must that really happen? Why should an outsider come and do this type of a thing? And I want to say that it is on both sides. If the so-called Amazonian fighters decide that there will be peace in the northwest and they put down their guns and weapons, I think that this is not what we should use, to fight ourselves. There are other means of fighting for freedom, also, not only by killing or destabilizing the society, making sure that people suffer. No, suffering should not come from us. Suffering should not come from us. That's why the Pope said, enough with war and killing, because humanity, each human being is so important. I am here, I see a lot of IDPs here, and I have never rested in peace, because you find children of 7 years telling you they don't even know where their parents are. They don't know how they arrived to Douala. I think that the Pope's message is so tough. And to all of us, the ministers of God, we should also make sure that we live up to that, because killing is not only taking a life. If we, the prelates of God in this world, in this country, are not supporting the truth and justice and peace, it means we are killing. We have to be careful too. We have to overcome temptations and atrocities and scandals that we are causing, in order that the man who is the sheep that comes to us should also feel welcome and taken care of. It seems as if the sin of indifference is all over the world, beginning with myself.
Okay, Father, thank you so much for that insight. You mentioned it above. The Holy Father spoke on the important place the youths have in the society, mentioning that frustration can evidently lead to violence. How can you analyze that phrase by Pope Leo?
Truth. It is Jesus that sent that message through the Pope. People should not look at the Pope. They should look at the message from heaven. Because I tell you, I work with more than 20,000 youths in Douala. That experience is so profound. Because you cannot imagine young people of all walks of life, they finish school, they don't have jobs. Even to think of them, it's as if they don't exist. We should have a special plan, for our young people. We should not be tired. If the government send out programs that will concern youth for employment, for opportunities, they should meet, institutions like the church. They should also meet institutions. It should not remain in the background. It should come out so that young people should know exactly, where their opportunities are, so that they can be able to engage in that. It should not only end with slogans. For example, in Douala, where the Pope addressed us, he also called on young people to be, the evangelizers of their peers. Because we find young people who have opportunities, but they don't want to do anything. They are lazy. He also spoke of laziness. When the young man is lazy, nothing can happen better in his life. As chaplain for young people in Douala, I tell you, it is important for us to sensitize our young people who are lazy, who have finished school and cannot self-employ themselves. And that's why the synod in Douala, Monsignor Sanwe Kleda, actually called on a synod for us to reflect on youth suffering, and especially to find how employment and formation, integral formation and youth employment in the society. He called on all the youth to let go even their certificate and start finding a way to be self-employed. And there cannot be a good employment when a youth is not conscious of what is bad in life. So the church has started forming them, and we are working on that. This is the second period of the synod, and I'm so thankful that a lot of youths are coming in. Some want to learn about learn to do to like shoe menders. Some are they want to be youths that especially the young girls, on restoration, on being tellers, and doing all the petit jobs that can help them to identify exactly what to eat, instead of leaving the country to go in another country to go look for greener pastures.
And the Pope insisted that the time for that positive transformation in Cameroon is now and not tomorrow. Thank you so much, Reverend Father Christopher GEH KUM, for accepting to be our guest on the news, and just to say that we will push further with this conversation in subsequent news editions. And viewers, that was what we put together for you on the news this evening. Thank you for always being with us. Our newscasts or our programs continue. Equinoxe would be yours at 7 p.m. and the news in the French language comes up at 8 p.m. with Irish Ngodomala. I will be with you again tomorrow same time. God willing, for now, it's bye-bye from us.